Welcome to video 3 in our 5-4 video series. In this video, we're going to be looking at a very specific application to solving by square root. This is one of those real-world situations that you will be using this math to actually help you figure out a real-world type situation problem. So, you may have seen this formula in science class, but we have a formula that represents the height of a falling object. That's if you were just standing there and letting something go. That would be the formula that we would use to model this. We're going to use a slightly different one for any projectiles that we're throwing up into the air, but when we're just dropping it, this is going to be our go-to formula. So we do have the formula listed. That is going to be h is equal to negative 16t squared plus h naught is how we would read that. H naught is going to represent the initial height, and h is going to be the ending height, and it doesn't have it spelled out for you in the notes there, but t is going to be time in seconds. So, the tallest building in the United States is the One World Trade Center in New York City. It's 1,776 feet tall. Let's say that you were on top of the building and you accidentally dropped your Mountain Dew bottle off the roof, and you wanted to figure out how long it would take to hit the ground. So what we would do is we would use that formula that we are given up top, h equals negative 16t squared plus h naught, and we're going to plug in the information that we are given. So our h is going to be our ending height. We need to do a little critical thinking about what we would plug in for this. If you are dropping something and you want to know when it will hit the ground is going to be 0 feet off of the ground. So we're going to plug in a 0 for h there. We're going to keep the negative 16t squared because we're solving for our t value. And then we're going to add what our initial height was, and that will be the height of the building, 1,776 feet. So we're going to go about this now just like we were doing in the examples that were just the basic equations. We want to get the variable by itself. So the t squared, the squared is only with the t, so we want to get that piece alone before we take the square root. So to do that, we would subtract 1776 from both sides, and we would get 0 minus 1776 is going to be negative 1776 equals negative 16t squared. Remember, we are still trying to get that t squared by itself, so we would divide both sides by a negative 16. When we do that, we're going to get 111 is equal to t squared. We have that t squared by itself. I'm just going to write it over here where we have a little bit more room. So the last thing we're going to do is take the square root of both sides. Remember, when we take the square root, we're going to make that positive or negative square root of 111. And the square root and the squared symbol will cancel out here, so we'll just have t. Now remember, in the very first video we talked about how when we are doing word problems or application type problems, we're not going to leave this in radical form. We're actually going to get a decimal. So we're actually going to plug in the square root of 111 into our calculator. And when you do that, it might spit out the square root of 111 right back at you, depending on what type of calculator you have. If that is the case, you're going to hit the double arrow button that is above the enter sign, and that will change it into a decimal for you. Now when you do that, I'm going to look on my calculator, it's going to give you about 10.54 seconds. Now, we have to do some critical thinking. Yes, when we take the square root, we need to have a positive and negative value. But when we're thinking about a real-world situation, and we kind of talked a little bit about this in the videos from 5-3 when we were doing the application problem there, we are talking about time. And one thing that we have yet to do is invent time travel. So we cannot have a negative answer for a problem like this. So this is going to be one of the rare cases where you actually don't leave the plus or minus symbol. You're actually just going to put the 10.54 positive answer and leave it at that, because we can only travel a positive amount of time. We can't drop the object for a negative amount of time. Alright, there are no U-tries for this video, so make sure you have a good understanding of this, and then let's go ahead and move on to video 4. See you guys then.